All right, so it's Friday, October the 11th, and we are doing this new challenge that I was listening to someone and they encouraged me to do a live on a daily basis. And so we're going to recap a couple of things that have happened this week since this is the first time that I'm doing it. But moving forward, it will be more of just recapping some of the awesome business lessons that are happening every day. And the reason why is because there is so much that is happening on a daily basis. I mean, from lessons that we're learning about with managing the team or things that we're doing in marketing, things that we're learning with the clients or different projects that we're working on. So we're going to be doing this live series where we go live, we talk about something. It is not going to be very long because we're trying to make it a daily habit. And one of those things about making a daily habit is that what I found when making a daily habit is not something you want to make this huge, gigantic task that takes so much effort. I mean, you kind of want to figure out, how do we simplify it and how do we make it a little bit easier for us to actually do on a regular basis? So, really breaking it down to something that's a little bit more manageable. So, that's what we're going to do here. Now, this week has been packed with a lot of great things because we started off the week in Austin, Texas. Well, actually started the week in Fort Wayne, Indiana for a wedding for one of my wife's friends, but then went to Austin, Texas for the Clio conference to really learn a lot more about what Clio, which is a practice management software for a legal industry. And a lot of our clients use Clio. So it was great for us to be there to understand what's going on with Clio and then also to check out some of the other vendors that were there. So while we were there, we got, I would say, kind of red carpet treatment because we were doing some video projects and some influencer work with Clio or at the Clio conference, interviewing some of the vendors on the floor, being able to sit and talk to some of the product leads for Clio as we talked about some of the new products, new features. So we're going to be editing, working on that awesome stuff. But I think a big thing for me is really being able to sit down and talk to a lot of the lawyers that were there and to be able to really understand, the legal industry from their perspective, because I think that's something that as a business owner, you really have to take a step back and really allow yourself to focus on is, how do you start to see business from your ideal client's perspective? And that is something that I have been really, really hammering in myself, is making sure that you're taking a step outside of your normal day to day and taking a break from how you see things and how you see accounting and how you're working on things, but to also really take a step back and say, okay, how do lawyers see what you do? Like, how do lawyers think about accounting? And how do lawyers think about, the finance and the CFO side? And how do lawyers think about data analytics? And that was a really big thing for us because we have been really thinking about it and putting ourselves in the shoes of a law firm owner. And one of the things that we realized is a lot of the jargon that we would use within the accounting industry, some of those terms of like CAS services or advisory services. And to be honest with you, they didn't resonate very well with law firms. Like, that wasn't something that they resonated to. I mean, for a lot of law firms, we really had to just go back to plain English. I mean, when it came down to, the bookkeeping that we do, a lot of times we would just tell clients, like, we make sure that you can understand your financial statements. That made way more sense than saying we do bookkeeping services, because bookkeeping became like this loaded term that a lot of people didn't really know how to process and didn't know how to really break down or didn't know how to understand. So one of the important things for being able to make that messaging about what we do and make that connect with our ideal client was to talk about what we do the way that they would understand it. So when I'm talking to a lot of lawyers, and a lot of times when they ask what we do, I'd say is we help law firms understand the finance side of their business. Now, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, from doing reconciliations, from being able to actually, I guess you say classify a transaction. Like there's a whole lot of technical terms. But what I learned is that it's not important to them to try to introduce them to the technical terms of accounting because lawyers already have enough technical terms of their own that they have to remember. So when I'm talking about the services that we offer law firms, my goal is really to speak in a way that they understand. Now, when it came down to CFO services, a lot of people do talk about, providing CFO services or advisory for their clients. But one of the things that I realize is no one really knows what the word advisory services really mean. Or if you get really technical, people talk about CAS services. And to be honest, like that doesn't really mean that much to the audience that you're talking to when you are trying to talk to someone who is going to pay for your services. Now, if you're talking to other accountants or you're talking to other finance people, they might understand. But when you're talking to, your ideal client, they don't really care about those terms. What they're really thinking about is how is this service or how is this product? How is what you are offering? How is it going to solve a problem that I am experiencing? And so we really started really tweaking that because when people would ask, okay, well, what is CFO services? It was a sign to me that, hey, just saying you offer CFO services is not enough for most lawyers. They need to understand a little bit more context behind, like, what does that mean? And why are those words valuable to me as a law firm owner? And so what we started to do is really look at that and say, all right, well, what do we actually do when we're doing CFO services? Like, what does that actually mean? Like, what are we actually doing? And what I realized is it just really came down to this simple thing is we help you think through your strategy to make your business more profitable and more successful. That is really what we do in CFO services. And when we started to explain it that way, one of the things that it really helped lawyers understand is they started understanding the value of what we were doing. And when they started to understand the value of what we were doing, it made more sense to them. And they became way more interested in checking out what we were doing and wanting to inquire about, like, hey, how do I get that service for my business? And I think that becomes true for any type of business. No matter what type of business you're in, the question you want to ask yourself and the question you want to really think about is, how do I talk about my services when I am talking to my ideal client? Do I explain it in a way that actually makes sense to them? Because if it doesn't make sense to them, they're probably not going to buy it. So it's really thinking about really revamping it. And a great tool that you can use is, like, we often use ChatGPT for a ton of things. And I think AI is a great resource. I mean, no matter what AI tool you're using, one of the things that you can do is just write out how you would normally explain your product and your service. And then you can ask the AI and say, hey, explain this to and you can just give a description. Give me how would a second grader explain what this means? Or how would a person who, lives on a farm, doesn't have internet, whatever, how would they explain it? And it's going to give you some options. And then what you can do is go back and say, okay, all right, let me put in a description of my ideal client. So write out what you do. How do you normally explain your product or your service? Now, I'm going to use my business for example. So if we write out how we would normally talk about CFO services, and then I would ask, okay, re-explain this if you were a lawyer running a law firm that is between $2 to $8 million in annual revenue. You're trying to scale and you want to get out of the details of running the business, and or let me say working in the details of the business, but you want to be an owner who spends more time working on your business. Now ask the AI to re-explain what we do in CFO services from that person's perspective. And I think when you start to do stuff like that, what you'll realize is the way that you've been trying to attract attention for what you do in your business probably isn't the best way and probably isn't the most relevant way for the people who you really want to do business with. And so we really kind of have gone on this journey, and we've been like revamping. And one of the things that we were started talking more about is the data analytics services that we are releasing for law firms. So with data analytics, it can range a ton of different ways. And one of the things that we found at the Clio conference, as we talked about data analytics, what we did not know is that Clio was going to be really leaning heavy into talking about their AI and talking about, law firms transitioning from hourly billing to transitioning to flat fee billing. Now, what we know is if you're a law firm and you're going to transition from hourly billing, like billing by the hour, to a flat fee, you have to know your data, because that's probably the only way that you're going to be able to pick a flat fee price that actually makes sense. And I had a great conversation with a law firm owner at the conference, because one of the things that I was explaining to them of why the data analytics is so important is because, you know, not every type of business is actually right for flat fee pricing. Like, flat fee pricing is not the right answer for every single law firm or for every type of business. I know that a lot of people talk about flat fee as like flat fee is the future, but sometimes it's not the right fit. Like, one very clear example is we were talking to lawyers. If it's a case, let's say if it's a client and the case is going to go to trial, and you have no way of understanding or estimating how much time, how much energy, how much effort is going to go into this case, if you pick a flat fee, you've kind of backed yourself into a corner, and you've also put your business at risk, because there's no way for you to mitigate this going on for months or even the case going on for years. But if you got stuck with a flat fee and this case is taking multiple years, you probably won't end on a profitable note with this case. So one of the things that we started really helping, more lawyers understand is that in order for us to figure out where flat fee makes the most sense for your firm, we really need to dig into the data. We need to kind of understand, what do your trends look like, and where we really look at the workflows. What does the average case value look like? What do your trends look like by practice area? What do the trends look like when this person is the responsible attorney, or when this person is the responsible attorney? We really start diving into all those details to really understand the data in a better picture. And from that, we can come back and say, hey, it makes sense for you to do a flat fee on these three cases or these types of cases, or it makes a sense for you to do a flat fee up until the moment that this case goes to trial. Now, when this case goes to trial, you probably don't need to charge flat fee for that portion of the case, and really helping people just understand how to use this probably ubiquitous advice that's being given about you need to move away from the hourly billing, but you need to do it in a strategic way, because if you don't have a strategy for it, it's probably not going to turn out as well for you, or it's probably not going to be the best outcome for you. And so as we started to think about, like I said, how would we tell people about data analytics? And one of the things that we started to explain is what data analytics is. The goal of it is really to analyze the data to help you make smarter money decisions in your business. Because there are a lot of people who are making decisions that are putting their business at financial risk. So, what data analytics does, it allows us to look at the data to help you mitigate some of those risks and set your business up for a better financial outcome, because we're analyzing the data. And so we really use the conference a lot in talking to lawyers. One is to understand what their problems were, to actually think through how we were messaging what we do as it relates to the problems that they are trying to solve. And then really asking ourselves, how do we redefine our products and our services in a way that makes the most sense for the audience that we are trying to reach. And so I would say that would be something that is pretty universal for any business. If you are offering a product or a service, one of the key questions you have to really figure out is how do you take your message about your product and your service, and then how do you redefine it in a way that is relevant for the target audience that you're trying to reach? So that's my daily kind of live for today. Stay tuned because I'll be doing this every single day where we'll talk about a different topic, and who knows what we'll talk about tomorrow, but it's going to be something business related of lessons that we're learning and then lessons that we're sharing with others.